focus on Africa.
Some people scared of heights. Some people scared of ghosts. Some people just scared of the truth.
Them can't take enough of food. The benki. Nibibam.
Mama Africa, the golden rule. Them can't take you fool. Was a youth him a talk the truth to the whole world. Follow the Benki young. Hey. No the reasoning, no having no seasoning every Tuesday. Even you hear it ring. Hey. If you don't believe him, just believe the truth. Open up your ears now, feel the proof. That them can't take you fool.
Recently, in popular culture, we get more accustomed to the term and the usage of the term Kush in our music and even as a strain of marijuana these days. The term Kush has been floating around. Also, the term is also used to reference a very powerful and ancient Nubian society along the Nile River, geographically in Ethiopia and Sudan, and stretch in what is today Egypt, but then it would be Kemet and Kush. The region united is called Sematawi, simply meaning the union of the two regions. Sema means two, ta means land, we represent the union along the Nile Valley. And in the middle of this, in the African interior, you have other nations like the Ta Seti, who use the bow. I have Ta Nature, which more in the interior, like in the Congo and South Sudan. So this region united under a powerful kingdom or queendom. Basis of the civilization, the people call themselves Kushites. Before Rome, before the term Ethiopia, before Abyssinia, these people call themselves the Kushites. They went on to form what is called the Kemet or the ancient Egyptian empire. They went across the Red Sea and formed the Sabaean empire. They went further to form the Elamite empire, which is the African empire that preceded the Persians, who were established based on migrations from the north with the Medes and people like that. So all the way, the Kush also continues to China, establishing the first Shang dynasty. And we also can see the records along the way in India with the Dravidians, and we also see it in Cambodia with the high technical architectural advances there. Also, we see Kushite remnants in Mesopotamia, across from the Red Sea, where they created the cuneiform writing system. First cities in the region was like Susa, Anshan, and Babylon. This is why the Bible says Babylon is the son of Kush. Eventually, Babylon will be overridden by the Assyrians, where the Assyrian capital would be in Babylon and Nineveh. Under the Assyrians, Babylon became one of the worst states in our historical narrative. What is there is the overrunning by the Assyrians into the city of Babylon that was originally a Kushite empire. So it is the Assyrians who took the tribe of Judah into captivity in the city of Babylon. Here you have a Neo-Babylon empire. From there, the Assyrians would willpower attack the Egypt and also its neighbors in the Levant until it dominate the region starting from about the 9th century BC. Shift from Mesopotamia now into Europe. And here we see Kushite relic, the Etruscans in Europe. And this, according to Martin Bernal's book, Black Athena, established that African Ethiopian Kushites established the language systems and the first architectural monuments and also the writings and literature for Europe, the Etruscans. Then the Greek and the Roma got built upon that, but it originally was an African foundation. Also, we can come into the Americans and look at the Mayan civilization and its deposit in the more Caribbean, South American region as well. So the whole globe was a Kushite world in prehistory. And then we also see the seeding of the Kushite remnants in what is where history begins. You have prehistory and a whole world before that, and then where history begins is where we start to have records in writing or ideogram or pictograph. All right. So by the time we get to the first historical record, which is 3200 BC, the Palette of Narmer, the Kushites have already spanned millennia. So the Palette of Narmer is a document with Narmer Menes conquering his enemies to the north and to the south. You can see defeating the Asiatics in the Delta, who throughout this literature will be the foreigners and the invaders of this ancient Nile Valley civilization. The Asiatics will come in the form of the Hyksos, and they will come in other forms as well, and they will dominate periodically throughout the 3,000 year span of this civilization. The Asiatics usually occupy the north, which is called the Delta. Very seldom they would make it in the south. The south usually controlled by the Kushite kings or queens. This time, the land is no longer united, and this is why the role of a central king is so important. The nation center around him or her or the queen. So when you have petty kings and everybody said them a king, you have a splinter in our society, and you can see it in the art, you can see it in the development, you can see it in the stability and the peace in the nation itself. So those breakdowns are called intermediate period, all right, within the story as it is told from the Nile Valley. One would be after the reign of King Pepe in around what they call the 6th dynasty. All right, so we said Narmer Menes established the 1st dynasty. All right, by the time you get to the 2nd, 3rd, 4th dynasty, you have Imhotep, medicine of the pyramids and high architectural structure. By the time you get to the 5th and 6th, you start to have writing systems, the media nature. All right, after that, now everything break down after King Pepe. First intermediate period. This means central authority has broken down. Every man a rule. By the time you get to the 11th and 12th dynasty, you have Mentuhotep, which is about 2000 BC. Him come in and put back the system together again. So now you have another Kushite king who will establish central authority. And the interesting thing about Mentuhotep is that during 150 years of this breakdown in our society, his 4 parents used diplomacy. They try to use everything to restore back order and in the kingdom and queendom of Kush. But it thing gets so bad, they could only use force. So they send their son, right, the Intep family, send their son Mentuhotep deep into Kash, into ancient Ethiopia before it named Ethiopia, to learn the ways of the Magi. You hear that? The Magi. The word Magi we translate back into magic in the modern vernacular. But the Magi was an ancient warrior class within the Kushite system. And they are the ones who protected the king and trained the king and developed the king into a warrior. Above the Magi, now you have the Jedi. And this may be where we get the term from, dread. You know, the Jedi is like a high priest who in above the Magi itself. So it's a whole mystical place. Ancient Kash, ancient Ethiopia was, and it was from that source. Kemet would constantly be restored in its breakdown periods, and it is from that source it was established. All right. Now we could go on and say even Kush itself have its origins in more southern equatorial Africa. In Uganda, Tanzania, at the foothills of the Kilimanjaro. Save that for our next story. The point here is that Kush is the root of this whole thing, the global span of civilization, in terms of its architecture, in terms of its writing systems, in terms of philosophy. And that is a very keen point to center on, because we will see where from this philosophy all the three major Western religions will be seeded. All right? Seeded, and then eventually it would have to concede to it. All right? So the child become the parent, and the parent become the child, and the world turn over upside down. And this is why when you really look at Africa from the perspective, the Nile flows from, looking at the map now, from south to north. It's not possible. So our ancestors had the African continent from the perspective where Africa would be on top of the world. So to have put South Africa up on top, and then Egypt would actually be on the back, the below that. Because why? You follow the flow of the river. All right? Hopefully not too technical. These are just, what is fully established now. But the problem is that these things are, the museums, in a higher echelons of academics, mythology is struggling to catch up. So we talk again about Mentuhotep and about the 12th dynasty. Another breakdown again, famous one. After Mentuhotep, because Mentuhotep restored for both from the 12th, 13th dynasty, breakdown again. So by the time you have the 14th, 15th, 16th dynasty, pure petty kings, again you have another intermediate period. Every man said them are the ruler, and you have order. By the time you get to the 17th dynasty now, you have Amos and Kamos, right? They are going to kick out the Ixos. The Ixos had ruled for 150 years, from around 1700 BC to about 1550 BC. And the Hyksos, again, we mentioned, are considered Asiatics. They have a different phenotype, generally come from areas in Mesopotamia or from the steppes of Eurasia. All right, and they would set up their positions in the Levant, and from there they would catapult and launch their raids or assimilation campaigns into Africa through Egypt. So Egypt becomes that. So the Levant had to become a buffer zone. So by the time when Amos and Kamos restore African traditional rule in the Nile Valley region now, you get to the rulers like Thutmose I, Thutmose II, you get to Hatshepsut, and then you have Akhenaten, and then you have King Tut. All of these are 18th dynasty rulers. I did not list the 18th dynasty names, the rulers in chronological order. You find that they will put a strong hold on the Levant in the era where we call Palestine or Israel today. This is because the region is central for trade and also as a defense mechanism. One nation can use it as a springboard for launch and attack against the next. This is why in the 18th dynasty, the Egyptians strengthened their grip. The seeding of these societies are Kushite. Mythology tells you that the land of Palestine was called Canaan. All right, you break it down, it says Ka-Anu. So it brings it within the realm of the Egyptian language system, even by the name itself. Ancient Egyptian, I should say. The Median nature, Kemetic language. So the system will reach a high point before it breaks down again. 18th and the 19th dynasty, known as the Golden Age. 19th dynasty, Ramses, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The name Ramses is like a nickname. Anytime they say Ra Mesu in the true name, Mesu means born of. Ra is like the Most High, represented by the sun in the sky. So born of the Most High. The name Ramesu becomes Ramses. And they have Ramses 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 up to about 11. Alright, but the famous one is Ramses II. And he left monuments in Abu Simbel, where you call the Ramesseum, and that is a major feature in the Nile. And interestingly, that had to be saved by UNESCO from being swallowed up under Lake Nasser when they built the Aswan Dam in about the 1950s, somewhere around there, right? The whole of the Kushite records became buried under Lake Nasser. This is something that we should know. So if you want to know where is the Black Man Bible, half it buried under Lake Nasser. That's where all of the written records, which was written in the Meroitic script. This is another script that started to develop around the 8th century BC, and it was distinct from the Egyptian Medionature. It was a Kushite script. When after a while, when Egypt started to have too much, politics from the north, the delta, Kush kind of just try to be more independent by themselves, because we have too much influence in Egypt now. So by the 8th century BC, then determined their own literature called the Meroitic script. The why this is not as prominent as other script, most of it buried underneath the lake for building the dam. Teacher call it the dam because it covered up a lot of ancient art. Would further prove what I'm saying now. Done by Egyptian President Gamal Abdel Nasser. So I don't like that all over the place, but sometimes we just reason with it, and I don't write down things, we just freestyle it. And as a way for reach the youth. So we have a breakdown again in this society, this lineage with 3,000 year empire, where we break down that in a 30 dynasty.
The Benki by name, like, share, subscribe, pass on the flame. Don't know the reasoning, no having no seasoning every Tuesday. Evening you hear it ring. If you don't believe him, just believe the truth. Open up your ears now.
Truth.
Alright, so this is the reasoning with no seasoning. You understand me? Usually I don't have the time for a lot of the pleasantries and stuff. I usually just get right into why I'm doing this and what I'm doing. So here we go now. We're getting to the point. So after the 19th dynasty, we're going ready with the Nile Valley civilization. We have skipped certain dynasty, but we are deal with the concept, why the society breakdown, why there are intermediate periods, why we have to restore order. Remember that, order is considered ma'at. It's like the society can't run without order. It can't work without truth. If everybody lie, especially if your leader lie, your president lie, your prime minister lie, which it's ridiculous. Imagine. So the truth was there at the foundation, and it's represented by this lady named Ma'at, who sit down on her stool or throne, and she have a feather in her head. You understand? And sometimes she have a scale. So, and sometimes just the scale by itself. So, alright. So, anyway, after the 19th dynasty, by the 20th dynasty, things start to get a little roughish. Alright? Things not so nice again. The 18th dynasty with King Tut, Akhenaten, Tutmosis 1, 2, 3, Hatshepsut. You understand me? The 19th dynasty with Ramses II, Setai I, Meneptah. This was like the golden age. By the time I get to the 20th dynasty, things kind of stable. But by the end of the 20th dynasty now, things start to break down. And dynasty means family rule. Family rule are when the same system. So that means if for example now, if you have the royal monarchy of Britain, right? If somebody come from over, say, a foreign country. Suppose somebody come from, say, China and take over England. That dynasty they done. The language are going to change, the concept, the vision, the history, everything are going to change. So the whole dynasty done. But if, for example, the dynasty remain if the king or the queen pass it down to her son or her husband, the dynasty continue. All right? The dynasty also continue if somebody outside of the family maintain the same philosophy and stay upon the direction and the projection of the founder of that dynasty. All right? So that's just interesting to know how you arrive at this. So in ancient Egypt, it was all the way down in the Ptolemaic period, that after Alexander the Greek, one of the high priests named Manato. It is his history and legacy that the world put together and formulate the timelines. So this is why when historians speak, sometimes some historian believes it's about getting the date exactly right, and sometimes I'll be honest, I am approximate with dates, all right, because the idea is to convey the idea and understand that all of these dates was arrived at by meetings with scholar and negotiations and back and forth, and they say, all right, this is the date we're going to use. Why it's so tricky? Because in ancient time, you never used to have this is the year 2026 or this is 1992 or whatever. All right, it would the date would be marked by this, a statement such as this: in the 30th year of the king, or in the second year of king or queen, so and so. All right, and hey, even the concept of a queen is kind of, we explain why the concept of a queen ruling in the ancient Egypt was controversial. But anyway, we will stay up on the track now. I will explain that at the end. So the 20th dynasty, by you get to the 21st dynasty, you have a foreign rule. And these foreigners now is known as the Libyans. They had integrated in it's always people who come in and allowed to flourish after a while and take power. So the Libyans was in the military and so on, eventually then get power and then override the power from the indigenous royal monarchy. And whenever they take over, they usually take over in the north, right? And that's in the Delta region. But then what happens is that the Kushites will retreat and still hold power in the south. When they hold power in the south, they wear the red crown, all right? When the king hold power in the north, they wear the white crown. When the two lands are united, Smitawi, all right, the king wear the red and white crown, all right. And we will see today the Pope have imitations of these headgear and regalia, all right. So all right. Where am I now? All right, the Benki does a freestyle this one, we're not bothered with nobody for fixing up. So there we go again now. So the important thing that I'm going to get at is that from the 21st, 22nd, 23rd, the Libyans, who are foreigners, they are Asiatic looking type. They don't look like the indigenous Africans from the Nile Valley. They more would look like Asiatic, who like people who came from over Mesopotamia or from the Mediterranean, the northern part of the coast. So they have a different phenotype, and it's clear when you go into the museum. The Libyans, they were a mixed race of people, and they are dominated from the 21st dynasty to the 24th dynasty. And in the 24th dynasty now, the position start to set itself for the rise of the 25th dynasty. Why the 25th dynasty is important? Because history gives you that. All right? It still argues that Narmer was an African Ethiopian Kushite. It doesn't argue it, but it just doesn't explicitly acknowledge it. All right? And we have to propagate this within our own story. You understand? But what history does give us, with no doubt or denial, is that the 25th dynasty that ruled ancient Egypt came straight out of Kush, straight out of Ethiopia. They were Nubians. jet black. All right. And this dynasty had to take power from the Libyans. It started with one named Kashka. And the first thing Kashka did was get his daughter in a very powerful position called the daughter of Amun, means she the daughter of God. Right? And then after Kashka, you have Pianki. All right, the next descendant. But Kashka, the visionary and the founder who set the vision for the 25th dynasty. I mean, I have a brother named too. For some reasons, like, his family just give him a name there. And so many we have these African names. We have an ex-brother named Kwame. And he never hear about Kwame and Kuma. I say, if never hear about that, if your mother and your father give you a name, I must something. African names have meaning. High meaning and power and value. I we need to forget that. So what I'm saying here is that Kashka set the vision, then Pianki followed through. All this time they were conquering back to take over the territory, pushing further and further north. Right? So Pianki did his diligence in fight war, and him eventually he died in the war. So after that now Shabaka, right? Shabaka come into power, and the name Shaba. I believe that this name Shaba comes right out of the Nile Valley. Big up Shaba ranking. Alright? I don't know if they ever make that correlation, but Shabaka, very important. I'm going to tell you why. You see, this king now, his legacy and history, he was the one now who finally liberate the place, free up the thing, and reach right up to the north and liberate it up back. Right? Just like where Amos and Kamos did do in the 18th dynasty, this is what Pianki and Shabaka are going to do for them and restore back the African lineage and the royal Kushite on the throne. Right? So now, when we look on it now, Shabaka, another important thing now in a film reign, he discovered a thing where you call it Shabaka stone. What was the Shabaka stone? This was a piece of stone, as I mentioned again, this civilization writing stone, stele, palette, and these things are normal ways to record important things. So because of the intermediate period, which I explained, intermediate periods are when foreigners take over and rule, or when your society just break down. I don't know, fight against one another and things break down anyway. It not always have to happen to the foreigner. But in the case of the 18th dynasty was a restoration of Kushite power with evicting the Ixos. And the restoration of the 25th dynasty was the Kushites evicting the Libyans, all right, and restoring back the land. For some reason, in a classroom, they cannot do this, or do not do this, or don't understand how to do this, to realize the African position from the Nile Valley. You know, they're still taking a position from Mesopotamia when dealing with Nile Valley history, and it's because they can claim it from that position. But when we bring this civilization to the south and establish its origin, like what the Kushite incense burner does, now we own this narrative entirely, right? So Shabaka now, he find the Shabaka stone. Why am I mentioning so much time? Why is it so important? On this document, it had the African creation story. All right, how many people ever hear about an African creation story? No, we still know Adam and Eve because of lack of education, particularly cultural education, we only have a mythology that cannot be interpreted without a cultural education. So that's the problem with mythology. It's not that mythology is bad. I like mythology. I just rather African mythology. All right? And it's quite interesting, many of these mythologies. And mythology marks the founding of a nation or an empire. All right? That's what mythology essentially does. The main mythology of a nation, it explains how the nation birthed. So Christianity is no different. And that is why this concept of the Christ and the stories are placed right at the beginning of the Roman Empire. Okay? And its transition taking over from the Greco realm, which the Greeks took over from the Persians, right? And the Persians literally took over from the Africans, who before that the Africans had lost, had to concede to the Assyrians. So anyway, I don't like to confuse you know, but anyway, we come back again now to Shabaka. But this thing now with Shabaka now, the creation story, it explain, instead of say Adam come from Eve ribs, I never remember. And that's why I was trying to reason with that elder what they said. I don't remember some of these things anymore, man. You know? So I don't remember who come from whose ribs, right? But really and truly, the African story does not give you that confusion where you have to go worry about because Cain and Abel, who them mate back with in order to continue, procreation and all of that nonsense. No, the African story is this. It says that 4 peers, male and female, one from the north, one from the south, one from the east, one from the west. So now you have 8 entities in 4 peers, male and female, converging in the center to form the atom. And that explains the first spark of life and the coming into being, right? By human beings. And it also talk about the primordial state, the primordial waters, and we talk about the still waters. So it gives a very elaborate account mythologically. African mythology is actually African science. You see that? Because within that, what I just maintain, right? Even though they might personify and use people to represent where today in a chemistry we might say this is oxygen and this is nitrogen, this is helium. No, the African culture will personify it and say this is Ma'at, this is Teuti. But you arrive at the same thing scientifically, So, we'll come back now. So the 25th dynasty, Shabaka stone, established the African creation story and many other things. It's a very remarkable document for study. So after Shabaka now, another important king, King Taharqa of the 25th dynasty. And King Taharqa now is the one who he's known in the Bible. They have 2 reference for him, one in Isaiah and one in 2 Kings. And they said that he went to the aid of King Hezekiah. King Hezekiah was the king of Judah. Now the king of Judah was isolated, at war with the Assyrian Empire. By now, every one of the city-states around him, whether 12 tribe, whether 13 tribe, whether all of them, already surrendered to Assyria and paid tithe and allegiance and everything. All right? And King Hezekiah, king of Judah, and this is why Judah stands out from the other stories. His alliance was to the Ethiopian king, the Kushite king, King Taharqa. And it's right there in the mythological text. So King Taharqa now had to save the king of Judah from attack from the Assyrians. And as a result, King Hezekiah was the only one who was continued to rule in the Levant, in Palestine, Israel today, but he was supported and backed up by the Ethiopian king, right? Which eventually, after that, he wouldn't be able to hold on to it for long because the Assyrians going to come back for him, and that is where the Assyrians will take the Judah into captivity, you see, into Babylon. But I had mentioned that Babylon originally is a Kushite state, Kushite nation. It is the Neo-Babylon, which is the Neo-Assyrian state that becomes the bad guys of all of history. So when we burn Babylon, we really are burning Neo-Assyrian empire. That is when people from the north came over and took over this Kushite empire, and they are yielding power and terrorize the whole world from this capital, from Babylon and Nineveh. So that is just a clarity there that I think is going to become important in order for you to express yourself clearly and correctly within this culture, which has to be developed. So now, where are we now again now? 25th dynasty, Taharqa. Eventually, Taharqa have to go retreat. Himself have to go retreat because he might go beat up one named Esarhaddon. He might go beat him up bad, like 2 times. And then after that, Esarhaddon go back and, recoup, and then him come back and win the 3rd battle. And then Taharqa had to retreat. Again, when you say retreat, you retreat from the north and the delta and establish back in the south, in Thebes, right? Or Memphis. So now King Tahaka had to retreat after him fight that battle. And then the two Assyrian king were my problem with Esarhaddon and Ashurbanipal. You see? And to be honest, Tahaka lose the battle. But when him lose that battle, him retreat, and at this time you can see it, so the Assyrian power is becoming the central power at that time. Right? And they are the ones who are going to knock out Egypt. Begin its decline. This 3,000 year thing we might tell you about. It also going to disrupt the Levant in Israel and Palestine. It going to use that as a buffer state for spring in Egypt, right? And it also going to penetrate south into Persia and into Elam, I should say, at the time. And that penetration south are going to change the complexion of the Elamites. And now you have the Persians. Alright? So anyway, come back again. 25th dynasty lasts for 150 years, and it is the last time King Taharqa represents the last time an African imperial king ruled outside of Africa. That means in ruling Yemen, because what happened is King Taharqa end up when in retreat comes south, right, he end up conquer back the southern tip of Arabia, starting from Yemen. So now Yemen, it also always been historically, but the link between Ethiopia and Yemen across the Red Sea start to strengthen back now about 700, 650 BC. And that part of the Ethiopian Empire are known as the Kingdom of Saba. And this from here you get the legend of the Queen of Saba, which we also call Queen of Sheba. Alright? We believe that would have been related to one of the Kandake queens historically, and then becomes mythologized as the Queen of Sheba. But we believe it has relevance in the historical narrative as well. Alright? But it's just that we can't fully prove that yet. 26th dynasty now. After King Taharqa, there was one more king named Tantamane. It's not too many to say about his reign, because this is going to mark the first time now where actual Egyptian Kushite Kemetic king are going to get captured. Literally, drag him out and place and carry him abroad. You understand me? As like, what you call it now? I don't know. But the Assyrians depict it, and you have an actual stele where show it, and I show the king like him, I beg for him life. Right? So, but anyway, this marked the decline now, where the Kushite Empire are going to cease to be the dominant world power. It will have more rise and sporadic rise and fall again, right? Like the Kandake queens we would follow. Because after all of this, them say, look, we're going to just make a woman rule the throne. You see? Instead, we're going to just make women rule. This throne are going to be dedicated to women. We can say a whole line of Kandake queens from like the 4th century come down to the 1st century. But the Ethiopian throne has always been female, right? The male is on the throne to protect the female, right? And the only reason why you see people, there is a like when Hatshepsut became queen, they actually wipe it out of the annals. They never want to encourage it. But the story still lives, because you can see our monuments even at the Metropolitan Museum. But the thing with it, and this is my opinion. Let me make this clear now. This is the opinion that I have derived. I think that the challenge is, the whole idea of the empire is continuity. And whereas a male can have 20 sons, right? To secure the future of the dynasty, it's more unlikely for a woman, she can't have 20 youth, biologically. So to secure the empire, the male lineage is important. But the trick to it again is that the male can only rule if he proves his connection to the royal queen, right? The king is the Nesut Biti. No fear of business right here. Alright? And the queen is like, she have a special name in a Kush, we're different from in a Kemet. In a Kemet, they call her Hemet Waret. In a Kush, they call her the Amanitore. You see? Or the Kora. And the Kora is a popular musical instrument in Africa. We think all these things are related. But anyway, don't like to make the videos too long. So I just wrapped up with the importance of the 25th dynasty. By the time the 26th dynasty intermediate period again. 27th dynasty intermediate period again. And within this there was like another like a almost rise. Which would have probably represent like a fourth attempt at Renaissance, but it never fully successful. And this is where we show you say after the Assyrians defeated forced Taharka's retreat and capture actually his son. After that the Assyrians ruled from about 625 BC, and then after that the Persians came in. Within that the Egyptians almost rise again, but by that the Persians came in about 550 BC, 525 BC, around there. I'm approximate with dates, I'll tell you the truth. You know, I practice remember a bag of dates. I just remember these stories and relate them in a way where you can preach love. So anyway, so the 27, 28, all of this are just Assyrian rule, Persian rule, foreign rule. Until now, this I got put the final end to the 3,000 year dynasty that I talk about. Greco-Roman rule with the invasion of Alexander the Greek around 320 BC. Alright? This I got Hellenize the ancient Kushite Kemetic culture. And the Greeks Hellenize it and the Romans romanticized it. Alright, but it is all based on the stories that I established began to develop from at least 3,500 years, which the relic which we can refer to is the crystal incense burner. Sometimes at the Boston Museum, sometimes at the Chicago Museum. The last time we went to see it with a group, they said it was in the basement. Alright, it's not something that they promote a lot. So anyway, so we say all of that to show you. Say, yes, we can. Alright? We did it, we can do it, and we used to do it. And we teach everybody else how to do it. How to do what? How to bid, how to write, how to speak, how to organize, right? How to centralize. Mathematics, science, philosophy, right? All these things now have been reduced to belief, right? So now we have to build back our African knowledge systems through establishing some kind of tradition. All right, hopefully that was good enough and it wasn't too long. I might just split this one in two, from me to you.
At the foothills of the mountain, my happiness dwell. I can see that in the city, people are living in hell. Far away from the city, my happiness dwell. At the foothills of the mountain, there is no church bell. Tell the youth them the truth, tell them the truth, I say, yeah. Teach them the truth, they will find a way. Tell them the truth, tell them the truth, tell them the truth, yeah, they will find a way. Tell them the truth, tell them the truth, tell them the truth, yeah, they will find a way. World price is rising, youths can't figure it out. No gifts and surprises, wow, the whole place bomb out. Mothers in the market, counting every bread and kind. Little ones keep asking, why the hard times join? Tell the youth them the truth, tell them the truth, I say, yeah. Teach them No more hiding from the pain. Teach them now and teach them clear, so the youth can rise again. Tell them the truth. Tell them the truth. Tell them the truth, yeah, they will find a way. Tell them the truth. Tell them the truth. Tell them the truth, yeah, they will find a way. Feel the proof. Them can't take you for fool. Me, them can't take you fool. Me goes Benki school, learn the golden rule. Them can't take you for fool. Me, them can't take you fool. Mama Africa go, give we the tool. I tag you with glory, rise from the page. You them a gather, wise from the stage.